Yep, should be good to go.
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. Welcome to another Amplifying F Sharp episode. Today, let's go ahead and share my screen. Today, we're going to be covering why operators are so difficult to format in F Sharp. Before we get to that, just want to mention that you can come to amplifyingfsharp.com if you want to come and do a session with us. You can come to our website, click on Join Us Today. Come down here, just ask for some basic information about what you want to talk about or want to work on. We'll try to help figure out what that looks like. You can also come over to other previous sessions that you've seen or that we've done, and you can watch them again. And also, you can go ahead and, if you like what we do, you can go ahead and donate. There's the donate on our Open Collective button. And with that, I'll turn it right over to Florian. Why are operators so difficult to format?
Well, I'll try and share my screen and let's just jump in. So, spoiler for some, but Phantomus isn't perfect, and I'll try and cover a little bit today why that is. And just like rewrite operators from scratch and then just bump into all the problems that you need to take into account. And you'll sort of see at the end that to get everything aesthetic and get everything valid is sometimes just two worlds apart and very difficult to pull off. Um, so right now I tinkered with the main branch just a little bit and I just commented some of the code. So I commented all we have for formatting operators, and you'll see how big of an impact that already has and in terms of failing tests. But before we dive in, there are a couple of announcements. So on the one hand, we did a project update of Phantomus a couple of weeks ago. The TLDR is that the active maintainers right now are still happy to maintain the project, but we're not really, working on anything actively. So we're gonna review PRs, we're gonna answer select issues, but at the end of the day, that's pretty much all we're gonna do. We're just gonna try and triage issues as they come in and review pull requests as they come in. But other than that, there are like no active items in the pipeline. However, a little bit maybe contradictory to that, we are still planning for like a next major, which would be to just support F Sharp 9. So biggest code changes there are the support for nullness. And .NET 6 is coming, like LTS is coming to an end. So we're just going to bump our tool to 8. And we'll probably do that in November after .NET 9 was released. So there are no big plans for anything else so far, but we are acknowledging that this is going to be a major version. So if there are things you do want to discuss, which aren't impossible to discuss for any like minors, it is a good time to just open up an issue and start the discussion if you do want to contribute something that would be a breaking change. But know that from our side, we have like no real interest in these things, but it is possible. So just wanted to highlight that. Okay, so we're gonna just write a couple of unit tests and sort of build up a little story. We have a configuration. We're just gonna mimic that the max file, the max line length is like 10 characters. And this isn't realistic, but this just forces you to think like, how should this look like when it's on a single line? How should this look like when it doesn't fit on a single line and just needs to go to the next line? We actually do have a special setting to control this. And one thing I'm also kind of wondering is like, is this still useful? Like, should we still have individual control of an infix expression, whether how long that possibly should be in one line? Or should we just take like the max line length and just roll with that? Again, like everything going to tell today, there are no active plans to sort of deliver this. It's just a very interesting exploration. And for today, we're just going to ignore the setting and work with the max line length. So infix operators, I threw out all the code, and when we were to actually do a .NET test of Phantom score tests, so I'm just going to run all the unit tests. And right off the bat, like 600 tests just fail. Like if we take away the way we format infix operators, there are already 600 tests that we need to address to make sure that everything is okay again. So yeah, touching this area just is such a snowball effect. And that's just one thing that, I myself is just no longer really encouraged to really touch it. What we have today is not perfect at in any given case, but at least it works. And just getting something else in there, it's just well difficult. So first off, let's just start simple. Infix operator, it has like a left-hand side, a right-hand side, and an operator in the middle. And when we look at this from like an AST point of view, so we just go over here real quick. Let me zoom in a bit. So I'm just running it locally here. But if you look at the AST, what the compiler gives you, it actually gives you a nested application of an application. In this case, the inner one, it has the flag is infix is true. So the infix in this case is like the plus with the operator addition and then the identifier A. So it's like this thing and this thing is an infix. And then it's like applied to this thing. And we do have ways of formatting just simple applications. So if I just do A of B, like this is a normal function application. When we take this, we can see we have a single one, infix is false. And when we then format, we just, do the function call. Very simple. But here we need to, well, take different rules into account because of the infix. So what we're basically going to do first is so here I try to format this 1 plus 2, but I'm not really doing anything with that special is infix flag, and it's just treating this plus as it's a normal operator. Because at the end of the day, your infix operator is just another way of writing this like this. Like the fact that this is an infix operator allows you to write it in between these things. But at the end of the day, it's just a function which you call with two arguments. So first up, I removed a bunch of code, and we are going to store we're going to transform what is, that AST application. We're going to just, yes. Yeah, we're going to create like a infix app node, which just covers both parts. That's just a lot more convenient than needing to work with this entire tree. So we already process AST to what we call oak. And I kind of removed the infix app node as well, just to really start from scratch. So that's the first thing. I'm just basically going to re-enable. So there's something like infix app. There we go. It has a type. And this is the thing we want. Let's ignore this interface for now. So it has an expression, operator, and expression. And this is now our oak representation. But we need to create these things. So there's a file called AST transformer to go from one to the other. I'll basically, so we have like an infix app active pattern. This is basically going to see this like, hey, if there's an application and there's another application, and this is like an operator, then we're going to match on that. And basically, we are going to take a look at this thing. So this is where we convert all the expressions to oak expressions. And I'm going a little fast, but we're just basically, converting one to another and then having this. And then we create our infix app. So that transforms the whole thing. Now I'm going to try and build. And we have an incomplete match. So over here, I need to enable that. That's the helper to get to the nodes. And over here, when we sort of try and print this expression, we have an incomplete. So we'll need to add a pattern here. Let's call that node, and let's just write out like the string to do. Ignore the node for now. And then I would like to go to the test again, run that. So I said 1 plus 2, but actually it printed to do, and that's because this operator just prints the string, and we'll have to take the node and just print these individual parts. So we have the left hand side, which is an expression. We know how to generate expressions, so that's just generate that expression. And if we just were to run this again, boom, there we go. Now we just have one part and we're getting closer. So to speed this up a little bit, we know that it's expression, then a space, then we're going to try single node for the operator. So the operator is just like some text, some text node. Subspace is just going to introduce a white space, but it's a special helper function that takes into account if you use two subspaces in a row, then it's only going to add one space. So it's a little bit more clever than that. Then we'll do a gen expression and the right-hand side. And now we have infix operators again. And there we go. So this was simple. This just really prints out everything in one line. It did not check at all whether the max line length was reached or not. It just really prints one thing. And the next example will be, what if this is larger than the max line length? Like, what should we do then? Because the length we set here, we overrode it with like 10. So if you look, and you can't see my cursor count here, but it's probably somewhere over here we have the 10 characters. So this does not fit in one line. So it should become something like this to, well, to come multi-line and to respect the max line length that people have set. So in this case, what we have here is that we're going to have like a short way of printing it. So let's just do that short. Let's say long, and we're going to do long. And then we have like a helper function expression fits on the rest of the line. And then it's going to try first to do the short version. If that didn't, if that crossed the max line length. So in this helper, we have like a couple of helpers, but eventually it's going to check the max line length. And if that is the case, it's going to try the other path. Then it's going to do the long. So in this case, when we run this, okay, it says the to do long. So again, we'll just do the left side and the space and the operator in this case. And then you can do set new line. And do the right-hand side. So this is, again, very naively TDD style, just fixing on solving that test. But in essence, yeah, a lot more will pop up, and this will definitely not be sufficient. But just to move along a little bit. There we go. That test now passes. But there's already an interesting thing here. Like we put the plus after the left-hand side on the right side, but this would also be valid code. So how do we know which one we choose? Well, in some cases, it's a bit of a stylistic debate. And for anything style related, as a community, we just, should settle on something and just have like a good conversation. and what's, what works best for the community should be the final outcome. So there is some notion of this in the style guides, but it's not really complete. The style guide says like formatting arithmetic and binary expressions, which are not all infix expressions, so the guide is incomplete, and it sort of indicates that yeah, you should, be aware of unary operators, but that's not really what we're dealing with here. And separate infix are okay to line up on the same column. So it's not really touching, well, the examples say it should be on the right side. And it's also mentioning that you should be able to, squeeze more on the same line if possible. That is something that Phantomus actually doesn't do today. So when I look at this, again, this is an exaggeration. My max line length is like 10, but it's just going to put all these on the same line. So we're not following the guides at this point. Maybe this was written after, Phantomus had its default implementation, or this may have been written without any intention to update Phantomus. So yeah, that's how these things are inconsistent. And that's also, yeah, it's very easy to write this in text, but it's a little bit more tricky to well, get this in code and get a formatter to reason about this and then do this automatically. Then it talks about range operators. That's like a different thing. So that's a different AST note. We're not going to touch that today. But basically, that's all the guide says. And yeah, from a stylistic point of view, we want to do what the guide says, but it doesn't say that much. And there's a little bit of debate what this does. So the existing behavior over here is that we actually put the plus on the next line. So we got our test working, but the way it's implemented today is just different. And then there's, to discuss the style guide, you would create an issue in the FS-Lang design. This was a post where it was like, oh, it's like this and it should be like this. And this post touched a little bit more than just operators. So the discussion, well, went a little bit in a lot of directions, but it's an easier said than done thing. Like, yeah, we'll see later in the stream, if you put all these things on one side, it can be confusing. And yeah, it's fine that people have their opinion on it, but to be honest, we need something that works and that constantly produces valid code. And if we want that to be consistent, you'll just have to play a little bit in Phantomus, like what does my proposal actually do? Like, can all of this be still valid code? And yeah, there's conversation, but it never really went anywhere. But so we have the arithmetic example. The plus should be on the right side. But then for non-arithmetic operators, yeah, that's the same thing there. Like the fish operator, because that's non-arithmetic and the style guide doesn't say it, we typically put it like maybe here, like that probably is a little bit more frequent to see than if you were put it over here. So basically, when we run this again, we'll see that in this case, it's it just put it after it and a new line. So we're not really, dealing with this in a good way. So what we can very naively again do is just check if the node operator. So imagine we have a set of arithmetic operators, and then we can actually do this. So let's do something like this. So we just have a plus. Dot contains. Then do it like this. Otherwise, let's just shape it up a little bit. let's say, do the left-hand side and go with a new line and squeeze in the operator. There we go. So that thing doesn't exist. We just put that in the top. It's not the operator, it's really the text we want. There we go. And now this unit test will probably succeed. Almost. So still need a space in between here. Am I making sense so far? Gotcha.
Yep, it's kind of difficult to know like which type of operator you're kind of working with all the time, especially when it gets in the chains. And doing pluses feels kind of natural on the right-hand side, but very clearly when you get the arrows and pipelines, it feels better to have it on the left.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing you're mentioning there. We could also like look into what was in the original source code. Like if we just look in, oh, it's 1 plus 2, and we found out that was on the right, so let's keep it in the right as well when we reformat. But then the problem with doing that and not having a more opinionated decision is that two developers are just going to, one writes code like this, the other writes code like that, and that's what we're trying to avoid with a code formatter. Like it shouldn't matter who wrote what. There's one way of doing it. And if you're generating source codes, like from a fabulous AST, like we saw last week, then you also just need like a default opinion as a fallback of, what do you pick? So we'll just sort of say arithmetic operators and everything else. But it turns out that some operators just, well, can never be on the next line. For example, the equals operator, if you put it like this, it no longer produces valid code. So that's our next little fun exception. If you would do it the other way around, it also says like, hey, this is wrong. This is no longer valid code. So it has to be like this, but it's so we can't just say that it's an arithmetic operator. This needs one extra space to become valid code again. But yeah, B could potentially be like a multi-line expression. So imagine if B was like something like this. Something like that. Well, yeah, then all of a sudden you get like the difficulty of keeping this in like a perfect indent. So potentially this all just, well, is like four indentations from four spaces from the try, but then you kind of, well, you don't have that rainbow niceness again. We call this thing like indentation flow. Like at a certain point, you need to take this into account and then try and keep this in four. And yeah, that just complicates things as well. So the question is like, do you want to have this extra space, or do you just say like, hey, no, this just always should be on the same line, regardless of the max line length? And there are a couple of operators that just have this, that just need this, otherwise there's no valid code anymore, which are also just again a limited set. But yeah, that's just one annoyance. And I guess this is still more readable than this, maybe. So
Would you
I don't
consider
know.
that a bug in the F sharp parser, or is that like by design?
I have no idea. I kind of think because it's really only with a handful of things that it just is one of those lexing white space kind of rules that that happens. So I think this is really a requirement to figure out all the rest, because these tokens in the Lexer are also used like in very different places. So they just might it might just be related to like the Lex what's it called? Lex white space something. So I wouldn't call this a bug. This is just maybe very clearly by design. And um touching this to work would definitely be as much fun as just trying to get the whole thing in Phantomus working. So it's just like a bit of a pick your battle kind of thing.
Right.
Um, so yeah, what we basically have, and I'm gonna take a little bit of a shortcut. Bum, bum, bum. We we already sort of have like what we call the no break infix operators. And these are, this was already present in Phantomus. And then when we see those operators, we never break. So in this case, we'll try and go back to our expression infix. So it is either a arithmetic operator, or if it's a no break operator. Then I can actually just reuse the short version. And we'll see a little bit later why that is going to be, well, quite problematic. But for now, that's just going to make our test pass. So that's good. But then you come sort of into this territory. What if the right-hand side is multi-line? Like this thing. If we go back to the like online tool, so when we put the max line, yeah, you can see that it kept everything over here, but it tried to like format the sum y as sum next line indentation y. Yeah, but then that no longer really aligns with what was on the right hand side. So what do you do with that? I'm literally asking Jimmy, like, what would you do?
Uh, yeah, this is the interesting one here is the sum is kind of like a constructor for like a unit, and so like you might want to consider that like a unit, but like what happens? So like if you wrap that all in parens, does Phantomus change its behavior currently? Like I don't know. So I
Uh,
wrap some y in parens. Does that change how it thinks about it as an expression?
no, it's just really gonna see this application as the inner expression of the parentheses. So I don't
Okay,
think it's gonna behave different because of that.
interesting. Yeah,
So
because
the
it's an interesting because like it's still I guess and that's still producing valid code for that, which is fun.
yeah, this probably still is valid, but it's like confusing that Y suddenly like changes teams and feels part of X foobar instead of some. So um what I guess like maybe, and then again trade-off, but I'm not sure if this is possible. If we could like indent this until after the point of the sum, and then like keep the indentation flow okay, and then keep the y here, like that might be a reasonable thing to do. I mean, this isn't gonna line up. So the longer your expression is here, that's never gonna work. But then it's choosing between the visual aesthetics of, do I want to align with the start of the sum? Like I could, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like I could do it like that, but then indentation flow will be broken. So what's the lesser evil here?
How about starting multi-line white sides on their own line?
Multi-line on their own side. So like this?
Yeah. If like the white side is multi-line started on a dedicated line.
Yeah, that works. Although, so this doesn't work. So it definitely needs like either one
Yeah,
space,
sure. Yeah.
but let's go with maybe one indent. And yeah, we could try that. That actually is just relatively easily to do. So would be fun to try. So in this case, let's indeed go for something like this. And we're then here in the no break. So we can't reuse the short anymore. We'll just have to copy this. And we're going to say that we are going to indent sep new line and unindent, and then do gen expression of the right hand side. There we go. So this is like a little helper function that basically is just gonna indent new line function that it gets an unindent. And indentation only really works starting from the next line. That's just like a phantomous detail. It's been like this for years, and that's the way the internal context works. You cannot really, well, change the indentation like mid-sentence and have it react to all the rest. It only kicks in from the next new line. That would also be a very difficult thing to try and change because there are just so many edge cases that rely on this behavior right now. So would be difficult, and I'm pretty sure it's there for a reason, always has been. But what we're basically now going to try is, so left space equals indent, new line, right, and unindent. So that probably will play out. And okay, in this case, the sum can still fit on this line, so we'll need to cheat even a little more. If we put this on 5, then maybe the foo bar is not on one line anymore. Okay, so this doesn't break even though it's 5, so maybe that's a little bit of a bug, maybe not. Let's not dwindle on that. But yeah, this is a solution. It's valid code. It keeps indentation flow. So there are definitely a lot of good sides on this. But of course, aesthetics, opinions might differ. But this is very reasonable. Like, if you understand what the tool is doing. So next example, when you have multiple operators, you kind of have multiple nested infix expressions. So this is going to be an infix expression, and that's going to be the left hand expression of the next infix expression. So if we run this with our current rules, it's going to put A, B, and then put a new line and then C. So what we actually got is something like this. And while that works, a lot of people will probably be more familiar with composing a pipeline and just passing it, aligning these two. So that's the next kind of interesting thing that we need to do. We have an infix node, and then we know either left or right, because I don't know by heart which one it's going to be. But yeah, this is going to be mingled. So what we actually did there is we created another oak node, and that just captures all these together because these two are the same operator. So we're going to restore that behavior and then deal with it in a collected way versus dealing with it inside of this infix application. because right now, if I put a breakpoint here and do it like that, so we're going to see that the node over here has, so the left-hand side, and that seems to be like just an item. So this is probably going to be A. Yep, this is A. But then the right-hand side is again, oh, sorry. So this is the inner node. If I skip to the next one, then the left-hand side is my infix application. So this is going to be A pipe B. And then the right-hand side is going to be C. So we could try and investigate like whether left is another infix with the same operator, but that will only work for like this little example. If you do one extra level, then one extra level of complexity. So it is easier to deal with in like the syntax oak if we were to restore the infix of the same app. And again, we kind of had this, so just bring that back up. Remove that interface thing. There should be, yep, something like this. And so an AST transformer, we already had some kind of code that deals with this. So new line infix apps, same infix apps. I don't quite recall. Oh, so these are what we call new line infix apps. These just like deal with either combination of these things. So these are all kind of pipe related, but again, I don't think this is like this is a common set, but not a complete set. So in your code base, you might have one extra operator that has that meaning and will kind of not fit in this. So that's a difficult one. And we have, so the cons is like it's like this operator. Yeah, this is a little bit special in AST, so that's like its own thing. And then same infix apps are just like, okay, we're gonna visit and we're gonna keep visiting left and right if it's the same operator. So the first thing determines the operator. In this case, it would be the pipe. So I'll actually leave those two out because that should work. It should detect that this pipe is matching, and then there's like another nested version of that. So we'll just keep that one. And then go to the code printer, and we'll have to print that one. And we need to print that before the infix operator, because otherwise we're still getting that nested scenario. So just to do again as a sanity, is this working out? Yep, so we get our to do. Then I should take a peek at how this looks. So there's like a leading expression, which would be A. And then there's a set of subsequent expressions, which would be the pipe B and the other pipe and C in a list. So we'll need to deal with that as we go. No tests here, then code printer here. So let's again, we're gonna run into, now we need to format this in one line and also in two. So we have like the short long versions of this, and then we're gonna have something like this. For the unit test, we only care about the long, so let's just start there. So the leading expression can just print out that one. Then I can just really hard code until I have what I want. So that's going to be separate with a new line. And then I can do something like collect, and the collect function just lets you go over a collection. And I think there's a couple of variants of that. I think I want this one, or I just want call. I don't quite know anymore. Let's see what this takes. So this takes an F and a C, and it's an F tick. So it calls for every F for every element, and F tick for everything between the elements. So in this case, we have F tick first. So let's just say step space in between that. And then it's going to subsequent expressions. And that is a tuple. Like, think of the operator and an expression again. And I just really could be wrong. So let's do something like that. All right, it takes it like that. And ignore. Because this is conceptually okay-ish to follow, but debugging this is a little tricky. So that's why I tend to just put in meh and then see if that matches my expectations. So there are two subsequent elements. The space, I think it got that right. So between the two mess, we got one space. So in this case, between this and this, we'll actually want a new line. So that's good. And then we're gonna want something like gen single text for the operator. Put in a space. And then gen expression for the expression. There we go. And we got that working.
I will say I find it very hilarious that you wrote it like a pipeline, but your plus greater than formatted to like an older rule, the thing that we're talking about. So it's very, very like ironic, poetic, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, well, these two are indeed, according to our existing rule, more or less doing the same that we just wrote. So, but this works. But yeah, indentation flow is hard. So imagine the next example. So there's another bug here, and this is actually what inspired me to bring this session. So Urs reported an issue, and he mentioned that, hey, if you have something like this, then the indentation of this thing is no longer, correct. Like, this is like an no longer a multitude of my indentation size, and this should have one more extra space. And then you have Sharp Guide says 4 spaces and rainbow indents and then highlights, and it's a bit annoying. Like, I hear you, but this is so crazy to solve with all the other rules and taken into account. So I thanked Ernst for his report, but just tried to explain that this is terribly difficult to get right. And if we do get this one right, we'll definitely break something else. Like the 600 unit test that failed at the start, it's really just maneuvering within that difficult playing field. And I also just asked him, like, is there any interest for you to like contribute? And yeah, he was just being honest, like, hey, if this is a very big problem which takes a lot of time, then might not be worth fighting this battle. To a smaller extent, I do want to like do an attempt in our toy example here. So in this case, we're going to
And I just want to add a thing first before we go down that path. For
Gotcha.
me personally, when I see formatting code that does something like that, that's usually a good sign that I need to refactor my code. I think that's just actually like one of those places where it puts like the tool is kind of informing the developer, maybe you shouldn't write it like that. That's just me personally, though.
Jimmy, the customer is never wrong. And if they wrote their code like that, then it's it's the law. Yeah, a lot of these things can indeed, with a simple refactor, be addressed, but yeah, trying that as feedback, that's not what people are looking for when they report an issue. Even though sometimes that's the right thing to do. But in any case, it's an interesting problem because it really entangles in the rest of all these things. So we're going to try this with an if then else, and our if should just be right after the custom operator. But then is it possible to get the A with a correct level of 12 spaces, 3 times the indent, and keep the flow going? Like the if is here, but then the then is actually one removed, and then the else. So this might just work, or this is not going to work due to how if then else is formatted. So sometimes there's like some sort of locking mechanism that we just try and, oh, the if starts here, so the then should definitely align with the if at all times. Sometimes we do stuff like this to solve other problems. So I'm not quite sure what this is going to give. But yeah, it seems to say that the A is one further, or no, it should be one further than it actually is. And let me just see if I can print out what that does. So what we actually got. Yeah, this is what we actually have. And well, I don't have the rainbow stuff, but let's do like this. And then if I were to indent 1, 2, 3, so it is one before the actual indent. So that's already interesting, and you can see that the then and the if do align. So jumping through this rabbit hole would be looking at what is if then else doing. You can take a quick peek out of interest. But so at some point there will be something like if then else, which has its own complex set of rules. And then the question is, why is any of this doing any of this? Gen control, start core. Okay, this rings a bell. It's a little bit about, I think it's about getting that if then sort of syntax where you have if indent way too long condition and then go with the else. So this is all going to take the long path. It's going to gen starts. It's going to try one of these. It's going to enter. And I don't see any evidence why this would be locked. So I think the locking probably doesn't happen here. Leading expression results. This takes an expression, it checks the line before and the line after, and then lets you do stuff with that. So it writes this thing, and then it gives you the line count. I guess this is like a mechanism that we try and check if there's already like a multi-line if then expression, potentially, and then we do the rest. But this is the culprit. So this is going to say like at my current column, start indenting from that space. This is what the helper function does. So it's going to take like at a certain point we're starting over here, and then it's going to say like everything that asks for an indent and a new line starts, taking the offset from this location instead of the current flow that we're at. So when we're trying to do this, it probably is going to play out as we hope it does. But then we're no longer having valid code because, well, this is not indented as well. So this whole thing sort of requires an indent, which we actually can do. So going back, the infix app, it is long, it is not arithmetic, it is not no break, it is this thing. It is going to have the new line. And what we want here is, I think, an indent and an unindent. But this is not going to force the indent. This is only going to indent stuff the moment it happens in this gen expression thing. So I know this is probably super confusing, but I told you like, hey, we do this indent sep new line, as in new line indent only kicks in after a new line. But here we're like saying it should indent, but it shouldn't really do it. It should really do it when this expression sort of forces it. That's what we're trying to do here. And then we're close. Feels like we're close. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that was already there. And it's one extra. So, no, I got that wrong. So it was like this. Gut feeling is this is still related to the if then else formatting. So there might be like a step space kind of deal going in there. Let's take another look. If then else, this thing, enter start keyword. It's going to do this guy, leaf start, sep new line or sep space. So that's this would write a new line, I assume. Oh, it's sep size leaf and that. Gen start. Yeah, I was kind of expecting this to somewhat work. Just gonna copy this real quick in the online tool. Like, am I missing something? 1, 2, yeah. Anyway, close, like close, but then there's just something somewhere still adding that extra space, and can't immediately tell you why. But maybe to, like I said, we're not gonna solve all of this, and let's not dwell on this, but want to highlight some other cases. So yes, we talked about the plus sign that should be on the right side, but that doesn't always work, because when you do something crazy like this, you're you're doing a pattern match, which eventually evaluates to like a number, and then you're gonna plus and another number. I know, Jimmy, you wouldn't write this code, but some people do. So this tries to do this, but that's not valid as sharp code, because you're leaving the expression in the last pattern match body. Sorry, the last clause. You're leaving that unopened, and then this in itself is like invalid code. So what we want to do here is put the plus on the next line, and don't do this. This is probably a bit easier to fix. So, yep. So in this case, we have arithmetic operator, and just gonna be very, very dirty about this, but we're gonna have something like and. Let's check if the node right-hand side is an expression that's a match. We'll just do like a match for now. So if it's not a match, then it's all fine. If it is a match, we want to do like a future new line check, which takes a context, which see would the expression that we're passing in, which is the node right-hand side, would that produce a new line? But this needs to context, this needs to be aware of where we are in the file. So we'll need to put in the context over here. And then we would fall through and then go to the other case, I believe. So, oh yeah, and this needs to be like the generation of the right-hand side. Yeah, and it's the other way around, of course. It takes the function first, then the context. So basically, we're gonna check if it is a match, try and write out the match in one line. If this reports that it found the new line, so this is like really write it, but not really. Like try it, see if there's a new line. And if that's the case for the context for the current cursor position, then report a Boolean. And if that Boolean is true, then this gets negated, and we're not going to try this. And then I believe it's going to do the other thing. And then the long needs the context here, which will just pass. And then all these things needs to take the input context. All the stuff was partially applied, so that's one of the reasons now we need to pass it explicitly. And that should be it. And that didn't work, but I'm kind of curious if I missed something. Ah, yeah, silly me. So we want to check if it's the left-hand side. But, right-hand side could have the same problem, but, the match is on the left. So let's do that again. And then, okay, this fits on the same line. This as well. So that should be it. And now I think this still produces what we think it does. Maybe a quick sanity check. .fsi, paste. Yeah, so that matches 0, 0, 2, so it's all fine. But the interesting case, if there's like parentheses, then it's not a problem. Then we can still put the plus here. So if we do it like that, it needs a little bit of this, some of that, maybe. Yep. But then the nice thing is that people are going to report issues that, hey, this is inconsistent with this. What's that all about? So yeah, just being a maintainer, you can never really win. It's always something. And I guess the last thing, and we're not well, we might have still a couple of minutes. The style guide kind of mentions that you could have like two operators on the same site. Right now in our implementation, we're not really doing that. We're doing A new line, A plus new line, B plus new line, C plus new line, D. So all of these are different. We're not, you know, we're not doing this. We're doing this instead. And there's a lot of difficulty in having this kind of behavior as well. So we're going to have our same infix. And instead of putting in a new line over here, we should have something more clever and tell you like, can we still put this on the next line, or do we need a new line? So this would need to be, so it's a function that takes a context and returns a context. And we need to check like, operator expression. So that was sep new line. I need to pass in the context. And okay, now this is equivalent, but we want to check like, should we put in a new line or should it be a space? And the way we can do that again is if future new line check of gen expression of the expression context, then it should be a new line, or else just go with like sep space maybe. And of course I should do like arithmetic operators contains. So because that doesn't seem to count with all things, like with pipes, you don't want to have that behavior. So we're just gonna do something like that. The operator is the text, maybe, no. Text, yeah. What am I missing? Ah, yes, it does not know that this is an operator. Yep, no, maybe. Yep. Okay, close. So the new line here is premature. So let's cheat and then put in a space. Like you should do like the you know, subsequent try head, same detection kind of thing. And then it turns out that it always fits. And I think my future new line check just does like the single expression, but it should probably do the operator and the expression. Maybe. So set something like this. Yeah, so the same check should kind of happen in here. Like we should always write the operator, and it's really about the space in here. So it's not really it's really about this space, I guess, and not really between this space. So let's just move all that a little bit. And this is rather head scratching. So it's yeah, yeah. Uh, So this did a new line because this no longer fitted, but it should actually also do like do more like a new line here. So that step space is kind of where we want to have the other thing. So let's try something like expression fits on rest of line. So does does putting like a step space and the expression still fit on the next line? If that is not the case, go for a new line instead. Set new line, I think. So, and go, I think go for a new line anyways. So it did plus B, then put in a new line. So maybe that just should be a step space instead. Yeah, yeah. So it puts in a D over here. This might be correct actually. This hard to say. How long is this? Okay, this is 11. So the D no longer fitted on it, and that's why we put it on the next line. But then you could argue, oh, the plus is already crossing the max line length, but yeah, yeah. Let's not lose our sleep on that for now. And yeah, those were all the examples I had for today. This is why it's difficult to deal with this. And I'll leave the outro to you, Jimmy.
Yeah, this is interesting for me too, just because I've seen this kind of behavior of operators acting differently in different places, and it's just like, well, I just figured, yep, this is probably a place where I could clean up my code because it's probably just hard to do. And yes, it seems very hard to get this all right because when you have one effect, you have very much subsequent knock-on effects. And I guess the one question I have for you is what, since you were kind of like playing around with the expects, or like this is what it should be, how often should those stay the same? Unless like for a given thing someone wants to change, like should all these tests like almost never change? Or like, is there some like, do we have a defined way of saying like this is for sure style guide? This is kind of like this is just kind of how it is right now because there isn't anything, and we have to have something.
Most of it is just how we have it today. And I think the last real development to Infix apps definitely predates any style guide lore. But at the same time, nobody really, figured out some good guidance for style guides. And the people who do want to discuss typically don't get their hands dirty in trying it out. And that's where there's a lot of friction and mismatch. Like you really need to back up your idea with trying this in like an automated way and then see how valid this things when your ideas comes to fruition.
Yep, makes sense. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Florian, for coming on today, talking about this. I learned a bunch. Hope other people learned some too. Just as a reminder, let me go ahead and see if you want to stop sharing your screen so I gotta take it
Yeah,
over
sorry.
for quick outro.
Gotcha. Sorry.
Yeah, since just want to remind people, come to amplifyingfsharp.io, and if you'd like to join us, apparently my internet is not working, or for some reason, even though I'm still talking. You can click on join us and come do a session with us, or you can look at previous sessions by coming to our sessions page. Also come over to donate if you find what we do here very fun, so we can keep doing this. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.